It's safe to say that LEGO Speed Champions has started off well in the new year, producing some incredible new models, such as the ones you see before you, the new Lightning McQueen and DeLorean Time Machine models. And in this video, we're going to look at both the Lightning McQueen, DeLorean, and the general January wave of LEGO Speed Champions as a whole, and just see how it went, starting with Lightning McQueen.
Hello? Is this Lightning McQueen, the world's fastest racing machine?
Set 77255 Lightning McQueen was released on the 1st of January 2026 with 270 pieces, retailing for £23 here in the UK, $28 in the United States, and €28 in Europe. If we go to the back of the box now, you'll see another picture of Lightning from the rear, as well as a sort of render of him, and then a close-up of his sort of back wheel. And then going to the top, you'll see another picture of Lightning from the side and the one-to-one version of the wheel. Turning to the model now, I think that overall I'm very happy with how it's turned out. Start with the building experience. Again, it's really good as always with LEGO. However, the biggest issue was the stickers. This model boasts 22 stickers. 22. And that's just ridiculous. A lot of the stickers are in places like here with decals, but some of them are key parts, like Lightning's eyes. Yes, his eyes are stickers. The 95 on the top is a sticker. The Rusty's logo is a sticker. I mean, these are things that really shouldn't be stickers and should be just printed on for ease of building. I mean, they do prints for the curved parts of the model, but I don't see why you couldn't do some more major areas, like the eyes. Seriously, I can't get over this. Just print them, and I think that the building experience would have been less stressful, since they do crop up quite a lot in the build. Now, if we look to the design, I think Lightning looks really, really good from sort of the side on, or sort of at an angle like this, or this. But when you put him sort of straight on, so you're looking at him face forward, he don't look great. I think round the mouth area, the cheeks of him are slightly puffed out, and the sort of dip that he has in his bonnet or is a bit sharp. I think maybe if you just potentially you could just add a piece there to keep it upright a bit, but I think overall it's just the front doesn't look great. But from the side and all the back bits, I think have been done really excellently. I especially liked in sort of the design part, this area that they've used with studs not on top technique. So really cool stuff to see from the item. And of course it's using the new tires that are sort of molded into the wheels, so you've got a rubber outside that you don't have to put them on. Traditional LEGO tires are separate from the wheels, you just put them around them, but now that's changed. But overall, the design's really good. A slight fault with the front of the model is what I would say makes it not quite as good as some of the previous LEGO Lightnings, such as in the Cars 2 and Cars 3 Juniors lines, or the big Ultra Build Lightning from back in 2011. So, but again, this is still a really good model. It's not one that's, poor in any way. I'm still really happy with how it's turned out. It's just, especially, it's more when you look at it, angles are important. Side on or looking at it from sort of the top, that won't become an issue. But again, face forward, he doesn't look the best. Turning to Lightning's bottom now, you can see that they've actually tried to recreate his inner workings at the bottom of the design here, and that was really nice to see. Sort of a way of getting around the fact that this set doesn't include a minifigure, but I'd say they've done a really good job, and that it's nice that they've included this sort of details that I hope soon comes onto more Speed Champions models with minifigures, because it's really nice to have seen here. When it comes to the value of the item, I think it's still really good at the price it's at, though I do think it's one of the less, value for money Speed Champion sets, on the fact that there's no minifigure and there's significantly less pieces on this model when compared to other ones like the DeLorean that we're going to look at later. Has about 87 more pieces than this, so price per piece isn't the best measurement, but in terms of like stuff in the box, there's a bit less here, so that is to take into consideration. They could have brought in like another Guido to go with him, or maybe not Chuck, but I think overall the value is still there. It's just not as good as other Speed Champion sets. So in conclusion, I'm giving Lightning a B grade. I think if they looked better from the front, some of this cheat work had been, worked on, I think that we could have had an A model, and potentially perfect, since, it's not far off. A lot of the parts of Lightning have been done really well and translated really well into this sort of Lego form, but there's just some things holding it back, so it's staying at B for now. I hope that we get more of these sorts of characters in Speed Champion scale, and hopefully they'll learn from the mistakes of this Lightning and go for even better sort of design work. So overall, Lightning's pretty good, if there's a few areas that they could have improved. But now let's get on to the second model that we've got here, the DeLorean time machine from Back to the Future. Yeah, set 77256, the time machine from Back to the Future, was released on the 1st of January 2026 as well, with 357 pieces for, again, £23, €28 and $28. I think the name Time Machine from Back to the Future is slightly, clunky. I don't know why they couldn't have just called it the DeLorean Time Machine. I mean, Back to the Future is on the box as well, but it's not the biggest deal. If we go to the back of the box, we'll get another picture of the DeLorean from the rear in its flying mode, flying down the street. And then here you have the 2-in-1 function and Doc driving the DeLorean. Now, it would have been nice if you got an actual picture of it from the film, but it's not the biggest deal. And then here on the top you have another picture of the DeLorean and the 1-to-1 scale of the wheel. So now we'll go to the model itself and start with the building experience. Again, really good, and it was better than the Lightning because, well, there was far less stickers. There was only 6 on this model. A lot more printed parts, around here for the sort of translucent parts of the model, and it was a bit more fun, not having those stickers. But regardless, now let's get on to the design of it. Again, this might be a perfect recreation of the DeLorean. Now, there are a few areas, or mainly 2 areas that it doesn't recreate, which is sort of the curved area. Well, it does, but instead of actually having like a slope piece to recreate that, it's actually built so that the front wheels are actually higher up. So you place it down sort of at an angle the entire way, which I think helps with making the build look very seamless and, still quality and accurate. Then something that it doesn't have is the gold wing doors. Now, this is more because Speed Champions doesn't usually do doors on its cars. Instead, just take the windshield off. So that's understandable. That is something that the 2013 Ideas set got right with the golden doors. Now, speaking of the 2013 DeLorean, I think the only thing that it's got above this new version is the fact that it doesn't have to be rebuilt to go into the hover mode. Whilst it isn't too hard to rebuild the DeLorean and have it to fly, it is much better to have it built into the model and not have to be something that you rebuild it for, since that is more annoying than just being able to flip the wheels down. Though it's not the biggest deal. I display my Speed Champions all driving, and this won't be any different. Now it's time to discuss the minifigures, starting with Marty McFly here, who I think is pretty decent. I'm really happy with the puffy vest piece being, separate than just a print. You get a bit more detail on the actual jacket there underneath, and overall it's a really nice figure. However, the face is not the best on this figure. I think the lines just make him look nothing like Michael J. Fox, and when compared to the older Marty figure here, who looks a lot more like Michael J. Fox, and I think his face just works a lot better. I also think something this Marty has better is the expression here. New Marty's got more of a generic angry or frustrated face, whereas here this Marty's got a much better looking scared face. I think it would have been cool if maybe they gave Marty a face with the glasses on this time, but it's not a major issue. My bigger problem is that this Marty doesn't have an accessory. They could have given him his yellow guitar from the opening of Back to the Future 1, but I just think not having an accessory at all is pretty poor for this figure. Now we'll move on to Doc Brown, who I think is the better minifigure overall, because I think his facial expression is good. He's slightly updated from his older figure with a few differences in new torso print, but they are just virtually the same. There's a bit more detail printing on here. So overall, I think that both these figures are pretty equally matched. Now, the alternate faces, they're a bit different. The old Doc just has one of his many shocked or screaming faces, whereas the new Doc has an expression that is very specific to the films, with the bandage on his head, which is actually one from 1955 Doc, so it's not a major issue. It's just this is obviously 1985 Doc, the radiation suit on. So again, not a big issue, though I think his accessory is very, very generic, just another spanner. I think it's more just, this is a Speed Champion set and that is usually the accessory, but I think something more like the remote control, or maybe just something that's more movie specific, would have been cooler to see compared to, just a spanner. So when comparing the new figures to the older ones, it's not a big downgrade or anything. I mean, it isn't a downgrade. They're just not as good to me as the older figures, unfortunately. So in total, I'd give this an A grade. Now, it could have been perfect if Marty's facial expression was, a bit more accurate, but that's pretty much just a nitpick. The set is near perfect and an absolute bargain at $28, £23 anyway. But this is an amazing buy. I mean, if you can find it, it was pretty much nowhere when I got it, but maybe if you're thinking of getting it, or maybe when it comes back in stock, this is definitely one to pick up. And if you're just a Back to the Future fan, or just someone who likes Lego models, it's really good and a nice affordable option to the much bigger DeLorean that they released in 2020 or 2021, around that time. So yeah, definitely one that I'd recommend, and I think the value is definitely there for this model. Thank you so much for watching this admittedly late review of these two new items. If you want to see more Speed Champions reviews, we have a whole series called Retire and Review of recently retired Speed Champion sets. So I thank you for watching and take care.